The Killer is all of John Woo's dreams in one film. It's his most complete film, which is odd given that it was made using an incomplete script. The very best films are tender tributes. The very best films are in awe of what came before. The very best films seek tribute, seek homage, and find reinvention along the way. The Killer is a love letter. My favorite kinds of films are love letters. Films like Pulp Fiction, several of the staples of the French New Wave. The Killer might be the most tender out of all of them because John Woo is so shameless and so understanding of the methods that he is borrowing, of the themes that he is lifting. The most obvious one being with the fashion. And this comes from Jean-Pierre Melville, specifically Le Samouraï, 1967. This is where you get the trench coat and the sunglasses. This is where you get the general atmospherics of Chow Yun-fat's character, Zhong, the killer, the main character. This is where you get the atmospherics, the emotive specifics, or really abstractions, emotive abstractions that Chow Yun-fat brings to his character, and which is highlighted by John Woo's atmospherics, all come from Melville. And when Melville used fashion, he used it to make a stylistic statement about isolation, about almost about the attractiveness of the masculine identity, even when it is being constantly misunderstood and emotionally unavailable to anyone. Slow motion is a large part of the film's overall style as well, and this John Woo learned from Martin Scorsese, because when Martin Scorsese used slow motion, no one else was using it in that way. He used it as an impressionistic painter. When Martin Scorsese would use slow motion, he would use it to express the the fleeting moments. He would slow down that moment and bring it to its emotional core, its emotional, emotive, bare essentials. And it's through stretching out that time that Scorsese was able to show you just how fleeting, just how impermanent all of these feelings are. It's a very odd kind of way to show that kind of masculine mortality, but Scorsese did it wonderfully. And John Woo is the best pupil of that specific use of slow motion, which he uses non-stop in The Killer. And then we also have freeze frames. And he learned this from Francois Truffaut, but most specifically he learned this from Jules and Jim. And when Jules and Jim would use freeze frames, what he would try to do would be to burn something into your memory, to burn a specific expression into your memory, and also to slow down a very normative scene and give it some sort of weight, some sort of romantic gravitas. And he would also use, I think this is possibly the most important, romantic ultraviolence, and this he learned from none other than Sam Peckinpah, from films like The Wild Bunch and films like Straw Dogs. Romantic ultraviolence, poetic ultraviolence, ballistic shootouts, completely bloody, absolutely chaotic, completely controlled, and emotive and full of pathos, orchestrated like a ballet, because John Woo wanted to make an action musical. The film is extremely romantic. There are with freeze frames, fashion, standoffs, doves and pigeons, emotive dissolves, mirrored pathos, symmetrical characterization, and Chow Yun-fat as possibly one of the ultimate muses of all time. John Woo's emotional and personal connection to the killer. It's an unmistakably intimate film. It's possibly John Woo's most intimate film because he felt like Ah Jung. He felt like the killer. He felt like Chow Yun-fat's character. And luckily, he had a muse in Chow Yun-fat that was able to express and demonstrate the kind of isolation and loneliness that John Woo felt. He felt completely misunderstood. Chow Yun-fat was his ballistic prophet in a trench coat and sunglasses with double guns. This is one of the most intimate action films ever made, and it's mostly because it's a love story between Danny Lee and Chow Yun-fat. My own personal relationship with the killer, I'm completely in love with this movie, and I would show it to a very important friend of mine. We would watch it all of the time, this and Hard Boiled, all of the time. We would get lost in the symbolic value of the pigeons, of the doves. And this is actually the first time John Woo truly used pigeons or doves symbolically with any sort of metaphorical, literal power. And in this film, it's really about new beginnings, or kind of like a God's messenger kind of idea, because John Woo is a Christian, and these doves do seem to thematically comment on the final shootout at the church. They seem to thematically represent the existential warfare that is truly going on in front of us, not to mention the love story that is actually happening between Danny Lee and the killer himself. It's about new beginnings. It's about honor and salvation. It's about being forgiven, not just by yourself, but by some sort of cosmic thing. It's by making a grand statement, begging for forgiveness. It's about a blizzard of bullets and a ballet of blood. Redemption, redemption, redemption like a mantra. Think of Sally Ye's main theme like a mantra. The amount of times that theme is played. Redemption, hope, like a mantra. But of course, John Woo's film is an incredibly complicated action film. It explores the concepts of fatalism and violent predestination. Because it is foreseen, it is cosmic. Because it is cosmic, it is holy. Because it is holy, it is beautiful. And because this beauty is so loud and gory, it is profane. And it is tragic. The best kinds of films are love letters. And one of the best things that a love letter like this can do is inspire you. The Killer is one of maybe 5 films that artistically motivates me, that creatively inspires me to at least daydream of making my own mark like this. Like I said, I remember sitting there with my friend, one of my very best friends in the whole world, completely jaws agape, hair sticking out on end, going, oh my God, in our little punk house. Just, oh my God, this is amazing. This is art. This is what it truly is all about. John Woo can do that for you. And since John Woo is a romantic, John Woo views the world violently, that love turns into a murder. So when John Woo goes to kiss you through a love letter, what he ends up doing is he kills you. And he makes it feel so passionate, so moving, that you're thankful for it and that you understand it. Makes you a little less afraid of death in a way that only some sort of maestro could do, or a dancer, or a sculptor and his ultimate muse can make you feel so at peace. And this is probably because John Woo not only is a genius, is an absolute genius in his own right, but the people, the artists that he does borrow from, they are so varied, so different. And he borrows probably the most powerful techniques that they invented, or at least made popular, that it adds such a phenomenal level of sophistication to his work. Because, of course, what you seek to do is tribute, but the true geniuses end up reinventing them at the same exact time. And John Woo has his own stylistic trademarks, his own stylistic giveaways. But what John Woo has more of than any other filmmaker on the planet is love and understanding. He understood these methods so well that he was able to lovingly and tenderly insert them into his own film. And he understands action so well. He is, without a doubt in my mind, the greatest action filmmaker of all time, surpassing Peckinpah in this respect. He is the greatest action filmmaker of all time, because when you watch an action scene, not only is it immaculately choreographed, incredibly inventive, outrageously original and creative and entertaining all the way throughout. Not only is it all of those things, but it's emotionally grappling. With his symmetrical characterization, typically between two characters. And The Killer, I think he does this the best. I think The Killer is his best film, and it's one of my favorite films ever made. And it's truly a love story between Danny Lee and Chow Yun-fat, because of this symmetrical or mirrored emotional sameness and understanding and longing and like magnetism between the two characters. Every single shootout and every single standoff is emotionally challenging, because there's not a single bullet that is fired in this film, and there are hundreds of them that are fired in this particular film. Not a single one is fired without love, without longing, without wishing that you will be redeemed, without a prayer of redemption. That's what every bullet means in this film. This is possibly Woo's most spiritual film. And it touches me spiritually. It really is a religious experience if you're the right kind of cinephile. It really is a baptism by fire of sorts. It's an incredibly rewarding film, philosophically, emotionally, romantically, and just organically, just simply entertaining, just simply rewarding, just absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. I'm obsessed with it, and I always will be, and I hope that I always remember the name of my father, the name of John Woo, the name of the person who never fails to reignite the fire inside of me. This man's my firefighter. This man is my gasoline. Every time I feel complacent, every time I feel too cynical, John Woo brings me back down to earth. Or maybe, actually, he lifts me up. His films are like ascensions. Maybe he lifts me up in a truly spiritual, truly Christian kind of way. This film is very powerful. And this film is very open, and it's very tender, and it wants to help you. You won't find an action film that wants to help you overcome something in your life. As vague as that may sound, we've all done something that we're ashamed of, every one of us. Of course, objectively, whatever we've done will change drastically person to person, but that's not the point. The point is we've all done something that we consider terrible and unforgivable. The Killer is about futilely fighting, warring to overturn that finality, to overturn your sentence, to be forgiven for the unforgivable. The Killer is that secret war inside of us. And the allies that we wish we had, the people we wish we could call brothers, friends, lovers. The Killer consoles you It's a beautifully constructed and realized film about isolation and loneliness that wants nothing more than to make you feel less alone and to make you feel forgiveness, if only for a few minutes, if only for an hour and 45. John Woo says you are forgiven. That's enough for me. I may be easily moved by films, but not to this degree. I'm easily moved, but I'm not easily changed. The Killer has completely changed me. John Woo has killed me, and I absolutely love The Killer. Thank you, John Woo, for making this film. The Killer is a masterwork that makes me feel like anything is possible. The Killer is a flawless film that makes me feel like I'm actually alive. The Killer is one of my favorite films of all time. And that's because it loves me as much as it does. That's because this film is not just a love letter to the films and styles and artists who came before it, but because it's a love letter to everyone who watches it. It's a film that loves you. It's a film that you just have to love back. You can search for forgiveness, for redemption, for salvation, through honor, with it forever. And that is the gift of Woo. That is the gift of his cinema. And it's possibly the greatest gift ever given by any filmmaker ever. And I'm glad to receive it. Thank you very much for watching my video. My name is Zachary Conan.